Hi, welcome to the 2025-27 Full Service Community Schools Competitive Grant Opportunity Application Guidance. This is a reposting of the 2024 Full Service Community Schools Competitive Grant Opportunity. That opportunity was posted in January and was removed in early February. And we have made a couple of changes, a few updates, and are reposting it as a new grant opportunity. I will take you through what has changed. And I'm just excited again to introduce the grant opportunity to the field and to get these grants out the door and to Minnesota school sites across Minnesota. I'm very excited to see the new sites that we're able to bring on board and to see the full service community school strategy expand across Minnesota. In Minnesota, at the Minnesota Department of Education, we have made 10 commitments to equity. We have committed to prioritizing equity and setting and communicating a vision and targets for access to learning and high outcomes for every student. And these equity commitments that are in white are the ones that I really feel full service community schools highlights quite well. We also have committed to going local, and we engage and develop leaders at all levels, empower community partners in the continuous improvement work. We follow the money in full service community schools by allocating resources to learners who need those resources the most. We improve conditions for learning by focusing on school culture, climate, and social emotional development, and connecting teaching to the experiences, assets, and needs of students. And we give students options. By empowering students with high quality options, we support every learner's success. Our agenda today is I'm going to do my best to stick to 60 minutes. And I'm going to introduce the full service community school strategy. I'm going to talk about, is this a good fit for a grant opportunity for our sites? I'm going to take you through some considerations that maybe make this a perfect fit or make this maybe a little bit too too many constraints to be able to do what it is that you were hoping to do with some grant funding. So that's something I'll take us through. Then I will also kind of take you on an exploration of what are kind of expected expenditures and activities, and what can you expect to use the money that you would receive in this with this grant opportunity, and then go through the list of what has changed and what hasn't changed, and then take you through the grant application and instructions and what you can expect regarding what documentation is due and required for your application submission. And then lastly, take you through how we're going to score those grants, how we're going to prioritize the selection of the fundable grant projects, and how we will get those selected grantees, get them ready with a grant contract, which we call an OGAN. So we'll take you through that. So what makes a full service community school, or a school, a full service community school? That is how we talk about community schools in Minnesota. We call them full service community schools. The federal government also has federal funding, and that it passes through the Federal Department of Education, and those grants are also called full service community school grants. Across the country, people also call this strategy community schools. So either full service or community schools, either one of those is appropriate to use for this strategy. And we talk about our full service communities strategy using language and the expectations that are in the Minnesota statutes and Minnesota law that was just revised in 2023. It was originally put into law or established in 2015. We also use the Essentials for Community School Transformation Framework, which I will take you through in a few slides. And foremost, we are driven by the early adopters in our state. There are some early adapters and practitioners who really are the pioneers of the full service community school model in Minnesota and actually advocated for the passing of the legislation. It is not something that was dreamed up by a governor or even a commissioner. It was something that was dreamed up by school leaders across Minnesota and across this country. Leaders who came from Brooklyn Center, Duluth, Rochester, Faribault, Deer River. That is where those are the school communities where this model grew from across Minnesota. So our grantees don't automatically become full service community schools when they receive a grant, just so that's clear. And we also don't have a badge or a process of saying that you have gone through all the steps and now you are a full service community school. We have done a fidelity assessment, and you have made it to a specific stage in implementation, and therefore you are a full service community school. We are not at that place yet in Minnesota with our full service community schools. So we have not crossed that bridge of awarding a badge for full service community schools. And similarly, there could be full service community schools across Minnesota who have implemented the strategy on their own with their local funding, have found ways to make this strategy possible, and found ways through their community partners to create and implement a full service community school. And they could be a full service community school without having a grant. So it's really about the strategy and not about this particular funding. But this funding does make it possible for us to expand the strategy across Minnesota. Expect that it's going to take you, if you're in the beginning of your stages, it's going to take you 3 to 5 years for you to move through the stages of creating the causes and conditions for a healthy full service community school. And so you'll start to see different indications of this strategy making an impact, but you won't see all of those impacts, all of those indicators until you've reached kind of maturity and kind of the later stages of implementation. And of course, it is a continuous improvement strategy, and your implementation of the strategy and your practice of it never stops. And then just to know that schools who are full service community schools share similar features, but they don't all have like a checklist of exact things that every one of them must do. So the main thing though is that it's how they operate, how they make their decisions that determines that this is a full service community school, and that they are making the decisions around what needs to be put into place, what needs to be designed, what partnerships need to be pursued based on what they're hearing from their students, from their community leaders, from their teachers and their families. And all of those folks are at the table and have built that table together to make those decisions together because of their commitment to students. And so here is kind of why it's been difficult to talk about full service community schools, and why many people have many ideas of what a full service community school is. For the past 20 to 30 years across the country, we've talked about whole school, whole child, whole community, student-centered practices, family-centered practices. We've talked about the 4 pillars of the community schools. That is the kind of the way that we embraced talking about full service community schools here in Minnesota. We did these 4 pillars, and they were the foundation for the 2015 statute. But across the country, many of the key players had different ways of talking about this. And for some people, it was overwhelming, and they weren't sure which model they were implementing, if it was evidence-based or not, and how to have a shared language so that when we talk to and when we advocate for supports and funding for these strategies, that everyone has the same vision, everyone understands the impact that they can expect, and that um, there are kind of there are standards, and there is a way of being able to talk about the process and connect and also build tools to support the implementation of the process. And so we did have a group of 4 leaders across our country come together and bring many practitioners together to have like a user I'm sorry, a human design process for creating the framework. And it was really great to be a part of that process through focus groups, through all coming together at one of our national conferences and providing input, and kind of through an iterative process that led us to this framework and to this definition. The community school strategy transforms a school into a place where educators, local community members, families, and students work together to strengthen conditions for student learning and healthy development. As partners, they organize in and out of school resources, supports, and opportunities so that young people thrive. And that is the definition moving forward for the Essentials for Community Schools Transformation. And it just turned 1 year old in January of 24. So it's a nice new definition and a new framework. And here is a visual of the framework. Another thing to share that's super exciting is that Minnesota was selected as a pilot location for a partnership with the National Centers for Community Schools to pilot this new framework and check it out, see how we can implement it across Minnesota, how we can provide new resources and new and implement it into our grant process, and also into our idea as a state of how we build partnerships across sectors at the statewide, local, regional, neighborhood, school district, school site level, to be able to support these practices all the way from neighborhood, even all the way to national. How can we take what we do here in Minnesota and replicate that across other states? So we are in partnership with the National Centers for Community Schools. That's very exciting. And there were also some schools selected across Minnesota that applied at the same time that the department applied and were selected. So we're being told that we're somewhat of a super site, and we're super excited about that. So let me take you through the essentials for community school transformation. Of course, students flourish in thriving school communities. We saw that in that definition, and of course we would center students in the middle of all of our decisions, and in the middle of our hopes and dreams and ideas for the future. And this is why we're doing this work, is we want to see every single youth, every single child thrive. And the people who drive this work are the school staff, the educators, the education leaders, the community partners, including local government officials, and local faith leaders, cultural leaders, and youth and families. The youth themselves and their families, their chosen families, their community, families, whatever way they define who their family is. And then surrounding that, we have enabling conditions that make it possible for a school to center their students and to make decisions and drive those decisions with the people who are the closest to those students. Those enabling conditions include actionable data, inclusive decision making, a shared vision, and trusting relationships. And then we start to see some things that we were familiar with. We were familiar with those 4 pillars: the integrated systems of support, powerful student and family engagement, collaborative leadership, shared power and voice, and expanded and enriched learning opportunities. And we added a culture of belonging, safety, and care, and rigorous community-connected classroom instruction. This classroom instruction had always been part of expanded and enriched learning opportunities, but to make it more clear that the work of a full service community school and the scope of a full service community school strategy includes classroom instruction and includes connecting communities and families to what happens inside of classrooms, we pulled out and kind of made it clear that we see them as separate and connected things, of course, because they're fit together like puzzle pieces, that there are inside of the classroom learning opportunities with teachers, with educators. There are outside of the school year and outside of the school day learning opportunities with high quality youth leaders, youth workers, and those things are both incredibly important. And just as much of importance and as high of importance is that everything that happens within that full service community school includes happening within a culture of belonging, safety, and care, so that all students feel seen and feel safe when they're at school, when they're in their school community, and when they're learning. And lastly, we have a supportive infrastructure. So in order to leverage community investments and community resources, maybe that weren't investments made through the education agency, maybe in a state, or through education funding from that city, etc. But in order, but there are also, we know that there are resources invested in families and youth all of the time and in different ways in our health and human services, in our libraries, in our parks and recreation, just to name a few, in healthcare, in early childhood education opportunities. We're always thinking of the ways that we can make our communities vibrant and have them thrive. And so by inviting and extending our hand out to those partners that have those shared goals and shared visions for a thriving community, we can leverage those resources and increase the impact that we have together in all of the spaces that our students find themselves in. And so now we're at is this grant a good fit for us? So you've heard about the strategy. Does that sound like that's what you've been hoping to do in school, at this school site that you're considering applying for? Is that why you're here today? Am I preaching to the choir? Have you been hoping to find ways to address some non-academic barriers to learning? Have you been struggling with, have you noticed, have your teachers talked about this? Have your front office staff talked about, we are experiencing so much chronic absenteeism, and we have the best, most high quality teachers, but we cannot teach kids if they're not in their classrooms? Is that something that you're kind of bumping up against? If so, it is possible that this full service community school strategy is something that you could consider implementing, and that might really bring about a transformation in your school community. have you been wanting to make those partnerships, but not knowing who to assign the responsibility of developing partnerships with? Who do you know in your school buildings who has the time to write an MOU, to sit down and share data and talk about missions and visions um, and agreements for outside of school time activities and things that are going to happen on the weekend or in the evenings? Who do you know who can do that? It's often not a resource that is sitting around in a school building waiting to be tapped. And that is what a full service community school site coordinator is envisioned to be doing in their role, and it's what they are great at. So that's another reason that you might be interested in this opportunity. And then also, if you have quite a few funding streams that are intended to address targeted student groups or protected student groups who have persistent and historic opportunity gaps and oppression and need, and your school is needing to build better systems for meeting their learning needs. And if you have that and you have those overlapping plans, and sometimes some of them qualify for some funding and others not, and you're wondering for how can you bring all of this funding together, how can you organize it, how can it be sustainable, etc., that is another good indicator that this could be a good fit for you. The grant opportunity is not a good fit if you're looking for specific funding ready for you to spend on July 1st to fund an after-school program, or to fund a clinic that's co-located in your school, or to invest in expanding an arts or a sports program, and making a one-time purchase that can expand that opportunity, or especially if that one-time investment would be a capital projects investment. This is not capital project funding. It can't build buildings or put roofs over things or add a door or a window or anything like that. It is mainly for funding FTE, for salaries, and for building out a full service community school leadership team, and for implementing a community needs assessment and building a full service community school plan. And then once you have that plan in place, there are some investments that can be made into the programming and resources and services, but it comes a little bit later after you've done the initial work of establishing the strategy. So there are sample activities and appropriate expenditures here on this slide. I just kind of introduced you to the idea of the full service community school coordinator. It is a requirement that the school site that receives a grant will have a full-time full service community school coordinator, and that coordinator will be working throughout the summer months as well. It is expected that, or it is possible that your school site can contract with an external organization to hire that site coordinator. There are some iterations of this strategy where a school site will contract with an external organization that hires and trains and supervises folks like full service community school coordinator, and they work in tandem with that principal at that school site and with that school district to make sure that their work is aligned with other district priorities and school site priorities. It is expected that you would be able to use funding from this grant opportunity to attend national conferences or national training opportunities from folks like the National Centers for Community Schools, the Coalition for Community Schools, and the Partners for Rural Impact, I think is their name. I might have some of those their name switched around in my head, but there are those folks are listed in the grant instructions. So you would kind of have like an automatic approval for grant staff to be attending those conferences to help them better learn the strategy and the tools and the practices and processes connected to the strategy. Costs associated with conducting a needs assessment, stipends for educators, school leaders, community leaders, families, and students to participate in the full service community school leadership team. And then if you are an expansion grantee, that means that you already have your full service community school plan approved by your full service community school leadership team. And then at that point, the grant opportunity can be used to fund some of those, the installation costs and the operation costs for the programs that your school community has decided are the priority for your, for that site. So here's just a visual of that same slide that I just walked you through. It's kind of asking that perennial question of, can we use this grant? Would a full service community school grant give us the money that we need to be able to have an after school program? I get a question like that. Or would this full service community school grant be able to pay for what we need to get set up for a athletics program at our school, something like that? And I say yes, but not until you've gone through these first 4 steps here. And so by the time that you get done with those first 4 steps and you understand that the entire grant period you need to fund a full service community school at a full-time equivalent, a 1.0 FTE, you don't have a lot of money to pay for other salaries to start up programs like an after-school program and like a sports program. But what you do have is somebody who is very skilled and has the tools and has access to national and local networks who know how to build partnerships and know how to leverage community funding and community resources to be able to tap and establish those types of programs. But also you need to, before doing that, you need to know that that is exactly what your school community wants and needs and desires, and you need to design it alongside them so that it is something that they use and that they value and want to keep returning to that school for, and they feel included by that being a part of the school. Okay, so that's about the model. Now we're going into the grant opportunity. What changed? Well, there were lines in the legislation from the Education Omnibus Bill from 2023, and they stated that current grantees under the Minnesota statutes 124D.231, which is the full service community school statutes, that current grantees under those statutes would be prioritized above all other applicants for this funding. We thought that we had addressed that in the grant opportunities, but we had a misunderstanding. And so we removed the grant opportunity and we are republishing it, and we are able to assign 15 priority points to the sites that qualify as current grantees under Minnesota statutes, section 124D. 0.231. And there is a list of those grantees, and they are the grantees from the 2016 and 2017 state fiscal year grant awards for the Minnesota full service community schools. The 2022 ARP funded full service community school grant awards were not made through the Minnesota statutes, and those grantees are not prioritized, they are not eligible for these 15 priority points unless those grantees were also part of the 2016 and 2017 grantee list. I think there's one or two schools who are both. So there will be a list and you will know who you are. Then the other change is that all of our documents, our grant applications and instructions and budgets and all of our templates and everything have been revised and have a new title at the top. So there's no longer a 2024. So that is going to help us as we're screening the applications that come in. We will notice if you're submitting an application on the old file, on the old application document, or using one of the older instruction sets or something like that. And we will notice that and we'll flag it and we would follow up with you because you could have some wrong dates in those opportunities, and you possibly also could have a few missing questions. There was some copying and pasting from the grant questions for the narrative, the application narrative. So that has all also been fixed or addressed. There were just, I think, two questions where there was some copy pasting mistake. And then the application timelines and due dates have changed. So just pay attention to the timelines for the grant opportunity and then the due dates for the grantees. The due dates for things like hiring a grant or the full service community school coordinator, getting the full service community school leadership team up and running, the comprehensive needs assessment and asset mapping report submitted, and then the full service community school plan submitted. There's some due dates for the startup applicants. And those are the things that have changed, not very much. So what hasn't changed is it's still the same amount of funding available, still the same eligibility criteria that that the school site has either been identified for through ESSA. So they've been ESSA identified, or they are in a district with an achievement and integration plan. And that includes charter schools that are not part of a district, but that are in the district boundaries of a school district that has an achievement and integration plan and funding. So that's the eligibility criteria. It has not changed. Student demographic points are still based on the applicant site's October 1, 22 count. So that has not changed. The application narrative questions did not change. They just got copied and pasted correctly. So just make sure that you get the newest application narrative. The allowable budget lines are still the same. So the Excel spreadsheet will look the same. We won't have any new budget categories in there that now are eligible or anything like that, or anything that was removed. And the application component scoring is still the same. Every narrative piece is still worth the same amount of points that it was worth when we introduced the grant opportunity in January. Okay, and grant requirements. All right, these are all of the requirements. I've mentioned most of these a couple of times already. So you need to have that full-time, full-service community school site coordinator, and they need to be working through the summer months. There needs to be district and school strategic adoption and coordination and resource allocation. So adoption of the full-service community school strategy. That this isn't that your district is aware of what it is that you are committing to do, and of the impact of committing to implement the full service community school strategy, that the district will support the school site in following the decisions made at the full service community school leadership team, for instance. so and the district is applying for this grant opportunity. So if you are a school site within a district, it is the superintendent who is signing the grant assurances and agreeing to the to follow through with what is expected in the grant throughout the grant period. If you are at a charter school, it is the executive director generally. There you are agreeing to the committing to collaborative leadership, shared power and voice, building a comprehensive understanding of the community assets and need, full service designing a full service community school plan and getting that approved by the full service community school leadership, which is established according to the statutes, which those statutes identify that the full service community school leadership team needs to have at least 30% of its team members be parents, which we also allow students to be included in that 30%, especially in the secondary years. And then also, I think it's another 30% need to be educators at that school site. And then the rest can be community leaders and community partners. And the leadership team must have the principal and the full service community school site coordinator included in that membership. There needs to be powerful student, family, and community engagement and services that increase access to learning. And you also need to measure the impact of your strategy and of the programs that you decide to install because of this strategy. If you are a district and you are awarded 3 or more full service community school sites in total, that means previous awards from the Minnesota Department of Education and any awards that you were awarded through this grant opportunity. If you have a total of 3 or more, then you must also commit to having a designated district full service community school initiative director. And there are definitions of that in the Minnesota statutes. And also there is a coordinator, full service community schools coordinator and a full service community school initiative director sample position description that is posted with this grant opportunity on the grant opportunity site. The district coordinated leadership team needs to include the required members that are listed in the grant opportunity and needs to meet quarterly at least and align their plans with their Title I school improvement and World's Best Workforce plans. The instructions, applications, and resources. We have a list here of all of the grant opportunity documents that you can find on the grant opportunity website. A timeline, the required grant documentation, templates, and samples. We'll have a questions and answers period that will close on March 12th. It's going to be a shorter one than the first one. And we will also be posting questions and answers questions that came in that first grant round that were answered. We are now going to post the answers immediately because most of them pertain to this grant opportunity. Even though it's been revised, most of them are pertinent to this opportunity. So we'll have that posted right away, and then we will update that Q&A document with any questions that come in through March 12th. After March 12th, you can call me and ask me questions. You can email me. I do prefer emails because having the question written out makes it much easier to send you a formal response and to document the interaction. And let's see here. We will be posting this grant opportunity or this webinar for on-demand streaming. And then we have a full service community school website that is available all the time, even when grant opportunities aren't posted. And that website includes a new Essentials for Full Service Community School Transformation resources. It's a really long list of local and national resources that are connected to all of those new aspects of the community schools transformation framework that we went through at the beginning of this webinar. And then we also have a sub page on our website for full service community schools that is really great for the business office or for a principal or a superintendent that is wanting to fund this strategy um, in a sustainable way, and looking for how to fund the full service community school plan that leadership team comes up with. How can the school um, kind of point all resources toward the same aligned goals and make those dreams, those visions, those ideas, make them come to fruition. This Funding Community Schools subpage has other grant opportunities listed in it, other kind of playbooks that have been used across the country for funding the community school strategy, and then also a funding inventory from MDE that has Minnesota and federal funding sources that could fund things that are full service community school like. So take a look at those and give me a call anytime you want to talk through that, because that I get very excited about. And it kind of wraps back to those 10 equity commitments that we've made to really look at resources and investing in resources that address the opportunity gaps that we see in Minnesota. Then you're gonna probably wonder, should we be applying for a startup or an expansion grant? I'll try to keep this as fast as I can. A startup grantee has not ever received a grant award. So we've been awarding full service community school grants out of MDE since November 30th of 2015. So if you have not received one since that date, then you could apply as a brand new site, a startup site. And what that means is you don't have to submit a full service community school plan. And the reason that we would ask the people who have had previous grants to submit their full service community school plan is that Minnesota taxpayers have invested in the strategy and awarded funding for you to implement that strategy at your school site. And so we would want to see that that school site has continued to practice that strategy since their grant award. And so there should be a full service community school plan that they are implementing and continuously improving. So those are the folks that would apply for an expansion grant. It's also possible that you never received an award for the full service community school strategy, but that you are an early adopter, right? And you knew that this is what your school had to do, and so you did it anyways, even though maybe you weren't successful in a grant application, or maybe you weren't able to submit your grant application during the timeline that we had a grant opportunity posted, but you did it anyways. And you do have a full service community school plan, and you want to submit as an expansion applicant because you know that then that the funding would be available for you to implement the plan. You are welcome to apply as an expansion applicant if you want to submit the full service community school plan that you have. And also documentation that you do have a full service community school leadership team and that you had a comprehensive needs and asset mapping process. All right. So if you are awarded and you're selected for funding and you're awarded a grant and you are a startup grantee, here is the timeline that you can expect to go through in that first year of your grant award. So as you get started, July 1st or very soon after, as soon as you have your OGAN, you will be encouraged to hire a site coordinator as soon as possible so that they can get that full service community school leadership team up and running, and start running some monthly meetings and have a roster that they can submit with some meeting notes and agendas to the Department of Education by October 18th. Then that team will be coordinating, administering, facilitating a comprehensive assets and needs assessment, maybe in partnership with someone that they contract with, or maybe on their own, or with the research and development division that's at the district, or maybe even in partnership with your education partnership organization that's in your region, if you have that if you have access to that wonderful resource. So then you would be submitting that by January 31st of 24. And then a couple of months after that, we would be looking for you and your team to submit the full service community school plan that you've created together in response to the comprehensive assets and needs assessment. And once we have had a chance to look through that and approve that, then we would begin to unlock any amount of funding that you may have set aside to be able to implement what was determined as a priority in your grant or in your full service community school plan. Sorry. And then the expansion grantee, you fast forward through all 4 of those first steps, and you get to start, once you have your OGAN, you get to start at working the plan and gathering data and looking at having I'm so sorry, an evaluative mindset and having an evaluation plan for the work that you are doing together as a full service community school. And we would be working together with you and your team to develop a evaluation plan. That is also part of the grant expectations. Then when you submit your grant application, there are 3 things required for startup applicants: the cover sheet and assurances, the application narrative, and the budget with descriptions. It's an Excel form. And then there is the option to also submit your community partnership agreements if you have any. And those are a nice way to illustrate the kind of community partnerships and relationships that you already have in place that could bring a supportive infrastructure to your full service community school strategy. So those are nice to have. They are not required to submit, but they are a nice way to demonstrate partnerships. And the expansion applicants also need to submit those first 3 items, and then are required to submit comprehensive asset mapping and needs assessment summary, their full service community school plan that is approved by their full service community school leadership team, and an activities baseline Excel form. And I think I have a sample of that on the next slide. I don't. It's coming. It is coming. Yes. So some tips for your application narrative responses. Just know that the reviewers who will be scoring your grant application have watched this grant guidance webinar, have read through the instructions and through the application fully, and have received instructions and a reviewer rubric, which we will be posting we'll be posting it by March 12th onto the grant opportunity site. So you will have the ability to look at the way the reviewers are being instructed to award points. So they will have all of that. So just know that that is what they will be basing their scores on. And that reviewers will be flagging any areas within the application narrative or even in the budget that kind of make them wonder if the applicant doesn't have the intention of following through with all of the grant requirements, or maybe the applicant has a mismatched understanding of what is required. So those things we'll be asking them to flag for us. And another tip number 2, is to make sure that you're fully answering the main questions that are in the application narrative. So each of those questions has bulleted items underneath it. And so for each of those bulleted items, it's a concept related to the main sentence or the main kind of question area. And you'll see when the rubric is posted that the rubric kind of calls out each aspects of each of those bulleted items or each main component of each question, and it's kind of like represented in each of the scoring, um I guess, like the not acceptable, somewhat acceptable, average, good, great answer. So we kind of describe what a reviewer would expect to see for each of those types of answers. So make sure you're answering all of those bullets. What else? The suggested word limits are only suggestions. You won't have your grant opportunity or your grant application thrown out because you went over or under a certain word limit. You won't be penalized for that, for being lengthy in your words. But we do ask that you try to keep it concise because reviewers are busy people and they are reading through as many grants as they can, and they do appreciate brevity. Okay, the budget. We ask that you complete each budget item or each budget code with enough information to justify the amount of money that you are budgeting in that line. And so if it's salaries, I think a reviewer would want to know how much per hour someone's getting paid, and how much, like what percentage of an FTE is being assigned to that position and that work that you're imagining would be connected to this grant. If it's transportation, describe why that transportation is needed. What is it for to get students to and from what? If it's and then how many days per week, how many weeks or months per year, something that helps to justify the full amount that is in that budget line. I'm trying to think of like the stipends. If you're going to pay stipends for participation on your full service community school team, you would want to talk about how many people you would be stipending, how many months that team would be meeting, and how much they would be stipended um, per meeting. And if there are any like retreats or additional meetings on top of regular monthly meetings. And then same with food, like how do you get to a reasonable cost justification? What else? All of the costs associated with the grant need to be allocable, necessary, and reasonable expenditures. So that needs to pass that front page of the newspaper test. If you were buying 10 iPads, we would want to see that those iPads were, a reasonable amount of money. Maybe if they were iPads with a oh, what is that, like AirPads, or the ones that you need to pay a monthly amount to have them connected to Wi-Fi or a wireless connection, so that maybe kids could do some sort of homework from their home, even if they didn't have internet at home. Like you would want to make it clear that that is why these 10 iPads are much more expensive than just a standard iPad that connects to a home's wireless. They needed that data plan with them. Let's see here. And actually, those would come in two different cost lines anyhow, but you would want to connect those expenditures to each other. I'm just giving examples. I'm not saying that these are the kinds of things that the grant that you should request to fund. It's really up to your full service community school leadership, what you leadership team, what they want the school to invest in. Let's see here. There are 3 state fiscal years, so make sure you fill out a tab for each of the state fiscal years, and that new budget for that year will start fresh on July 1st. Any unspent money from the year prior will likely carry forward and be available for you to reinvest in that upcoming year, and do that in accordance with your full service community school plan. This is the activities baseline. It's a separate Excel spreadsheet, and it is only for expansion grantees to complete. And it is also similar to our word limit. It's not something that you would get penalized for if you aren't doing all of these activities fully and expanding every single one of these activities. Actually, we would want to see I would want to see the way that you complete this activities baseline align with the story that you're telling or that is told in your full service community school plan. So basically, though, why we need this is the Department of Education needs to capture what the full service community schools that we awarded these grants to, what they were already doing and what they were able to expand doing or begin doing because of and through these full service community school grant awards. And then the other thing that will be really nice to have is a sense of how many of our schools have a grow your own student, family, and community leader teacher development pipeline. That's there under powerful student, family, and community engagement. How many of them have a family, student, and resource center? So once we kind of like have this survey completed, we'll get a sense of what our full service community schools pretty much all do across the state and what maybe some of them are unique for doing. And so if you have something that isn't listed here, we have those other categories where you could tell us, I kind of think we do something a little bit different, but I think that I would categorize it as collaborative leadership, shared power, and voice. And so you would describe to us what you do and then let us know kind of where you are in that or what it is that maybe it's something that you're wanting to do because of this, like through this grant funding. And so then you would put a 1 in either column B, C, D, or E. So we want every single row that we have that doesn't say other, those rows that are in kind of that greenish color, every single one of those rows should have a 1 in one of the columns, either B, C, D, or E. There should just be 1 per row. And that would help us kind of see where it is that you start. And then at the end of the grant opportunity, we will have an activities, I don't know, whatever the opposite of baseline is, like the next step of it. Where did you end with your activities to let us, and that will help us keep track of like how many new things did you start and how many things did you expand, etc. Let's see. Then we have the application component scoring. So this is where, this is the same as it was in the previous grant opportunity. You have up to 100 points that you can get for the application part. So the student demographic points are kind of objective and are based on your student enrollment. The control that you do have over that, if you are a district or if you're a charter site with or a charter school with several sites, you can strategically select the sites that have the highest student demographic point kind of needs that have the most demonstrated needs there based on their protected student populations. Then there are up to 30 points available for the startup applicants. and 20 points available for expansion applicants for the assessment of enabling conditions. And same again, 30 points or 20 points for the staffing and supportive infrastructure. And the reason the startup applicants get the 30 points for those two sections is that they do not have a full service community school plan to submit. So they have more points available for those other two narrative sections. But the expansion applicants submit their full service community school plan, and that is scored. And then they both applicants, startup and expansion, also submit their budget, and that is also scored and worth 8 points for each of them. And so your total points available, whether you are startup or expansion, are 100 before priority points are applied. And so this is the table that breaks down the student demographic points. The student counts from October 1, 22 were broken down into quartiles for kind of the representation, like the low, moderately high, and high population amounts for these specific protected student populations. And so you'll see if you have 70% or more students who are eligible for free or reduced price lunch, or who were eligible for that October 1 count, then you would receive 8 points. And then the priority points that would be available are the new ones for this grant opportunity is that if you were one of those schools that had previously received a grant award, and I think that list is coming up, you will get 15 points. If you get those 15 points, you can't also qualify for these ESSA identification points. The highest amount of priority points that any grantee can receive is 15. So then the other schools who are not eligible for those 15 points as current grantees under the statutes, those schools could possibly receive ESSA identification priority points. And if you were re-identified for ESSA in both 18 and 22, there's 10 points available for those sites. Then if you were identified for ESSA comprehensive support and improvement in 22, or you were also, it includes schools that were identified in 2018 but didn't meet exit criteria in 22. You would get 8 points. Then there's ESSA targeted identification. Those sites would get 6 points, and ESSA linked high schools receive 4 points. Here is the list of the 13 schools that received grants in 2016 or 2017. These are the only sites who can receive 15 points for priority points for their applications. And then I'm going to take us through some scoring examples. So let's say that you are an expansion grantee and you are one of those 13 listed school sites, and you apply. So you need to apply as an expansion applicant because you've received a previous grant award. And let's say that your student demographic points qualify you for 20 out of the 32 points. Let's say that your assessment of enabling conditions is assigned 16 points by the grant review panel, and 15 points for your staffing and supportive infrastructure, 14 out of 20 for your full service community school plan, and 6 out of 8 for your Excel budget with descriptions. So that was the scoring components that were assigned to you, and you received a 71 out of 100. So a good average kind of a score. And then you add the 15 priority points to that, and you end up with an 86 final score. So that's one possible iteration of how the scoring could work out for a grant applicant. Here's another grant applicant, and they're going to apply as a startup grantee. They've never received a previous grant. And their site is identified under ESSA as a targeted support and improvement site. So they are applying using the startup application points. And let's say that they have 29 points assigned to them based on their student demographics. And then the grant reviewers assign them 28 out of the 30 points for their assessment of enabling conditions, and 22 out of the 30 points for their staffing and supportive infrastructure responses. They don't have any points available for full service community school plan and that's why they received kind of a higher points possible amount here for those first two narrative sections. And then their Excel budget receives an 8 out of 8. So out of 100 points possible, they are scored with an 87. And then we add the priority points and they've got a 93 final score. So you can see even with not being eligible for the full priority point amount, you can still have a solid score, a solid application score. Here we have a scoring example number 3. Let's say it's an expansion grantee and they are re-identified under ESSA. And here is an example of an expansion grantee that does not qualify for the 15 priority points for current grantees under the statutes. So that means most likely that either they were a adopting full service community school strategy site, or they were possibly, they received a grant award in 2022 using the ARP funding. And they maybe, they are wanting to receive another grant to expand their full service community school strategy. But those 2022 grantees do not receive the 15 priority points. So that's kind of the example that we're giving you here. So they also, receive the assigned points based on their student demographics. Then the narrative section is scored here, and their initial score before the priority points are assigned is an 85. And you add the 10 priority points because they are re-identified ESSA. They are ESSA re-identified, and they receive a 95 for their final score. Lastly, we have a startup with no priority points. So this is a school site that's never had a grant before, and also does not qualify for those 15 points and doesn't qualify for ESSA priority because they have not been identified under ESSA. So, but they have a student demographic enrollment. The students enrolled at their site qualify them for all of the student demographic points. And they received high scores for their narrative sections that they submitted and that the reviewers read and assigned high scores to. And they also received a high score on their Excel budget. And here they have, with 0 priority points, they could have a 96 out of 100 and a final score of 96. So those are just some ways to think about how those priority points can impact the grant opportunity and the prioritization of the grant awards. Another way that we are prioritizing the grant awards is through geographic distribution, because student enrollment and special student populations aren't the only driver or indicator of need. Need can happen because of where students live and where a school is established, and the community that school serves, and the just kind of the geographic challenges associated with that. So across greater Minnesota, there is less infrastructure, there is less public investment, there is less private investment, because there are less people, and so there's less funding to go around. And anyone from a small town community or who grew up in a small town understands this, that it is difficult, and that there are less academic and out of school time opportunities available. And so that is one reason that are committed to having geographic distribution of these grant awards. And another reason is that we really want to see the full service community school model or strategy implemented across Minnesota. We want to make sure that there are locations in all corners of our state and all throughout the heart of our state that are demonstrating how to implement and how to practice this strategy, and who can become partners and neighbors and mentors of neighboring school districts who will see the power of this strategy and who will learn how to be able to implement this themselves, because there are localized examples of it. So we are going to be also like prioritizing based on geography. And the way that we'll do that is we will have all of the grants scored, and then we will put them into categories by the economic development regions that those schools are in. And then the highest scoring school applications or school sites from those geographic regions are where we will prioritize the funding. Okay, and then the grants will be awarded hopefully by July 1st. Grant applications are due March 29th. These phases are also described in the grant instructions and listed in the grant instructions about how the award process happens. There is a point where we will send, congratulations and regret letters at virtually the same exact day. So everyone will be finding out before the grants are announced that they either have or have not received an award. Those who do not receive an award, we cannot share who did receive the awards until we have those contracts in place. So there will be a little bit of a lag. If you are hearing that you did not receive the award, you won't hear who did receive those grant awards until sometime after July 1st. And if you have any further questions, please reach out to me. I do prefer emails, like I said. I will answer my phone and get back to you if you leave me a voice message. I don't have a lot of space on my voice messaging, but I try to keep it empty as often as I can. And I will get back to you if you leave me a message, but it is best to email me. Right here, that's how you can email me. And then if you have a question after March 12th that you weren't able to submit, I don't want you to sit on that question and not ask it, with the possibility being that I could have answered it, because I can answer a question if it's been answered in the question and answer document, or if it's been answered in the instructions. I can answer it. I can just repeat the answer that's already there, or I can point you to the right page. But I can't provide an answer to anyone without, if that answer isn't already available in the published grant documents, I can't provide it unless I'm providing it publicly. And so that is why we have that cutoff date for March 12th, so that everyone has access to all of the answers that have been given. And I think that is just about it. So I hope you found this helpful, and I wish you all the best and all the best of luck with your grant application and with your school communities. And thank you so much for your interest in the full service community school strategy. Take care.